Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Vav Amud Beis, 6b of Meseches Megillah. We're at the very bottom of the page. The last two words, it says V'itztrich l'michtav. But just to give a little background, we are discussing the machlokas, the dispute between Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel in the name of Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi, and the opinion, to flip them around, of Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi, is that when you have two Adars, you read the Megillah in the first Adar, and the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is that when you have two Adars, you read the Megillah in the second Adar, which is actually our practice. And the Gemara said that they both came from the same pasuk in the Megillah, which says B'chol shana v'shana, every year. And the idea is that you should be consistent. You should do what you do every year. So the opinion of Rabbi Yossi was, well, what do you do every year? So every year, the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi, was that every year you have Shvat, and then you have Adar, and you read the Megillah. So even in a leap year where there's two Adars, you should have Shvat and then Adar, and you should read the Megillah. And the Gemara said that also makes sense because it's ein mafir al mitzvos. We don't pass over mitzvos. So if you have the opportunity, right, that first Adar to do it, do it. That was the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi. The opinion of Shimon ben Gamliel was b'chol shana v'shana. You should do like you do it every year. Every year you do it in the Adar that's right before Nisan. So in a normal year there's one Adar that's right before Nisan. If there's two Adars, so you should do it in the Adar that comes right before Nisan. And he said that, the Gemara said his reasoning behind that is, the deeper understanding is because it's this idea of mismach geula legeula adif. He prefers to juxtapose, to join the one geula, one redemption with the other redemption. The redemption that occurred in the Purim story with the redemption that occurs on Pesach, the Exodus from Egypt. So that's the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. And then the Gemara had said, one more line, the Gemara said, another source, it's like Rabbi Elazar Amar. Actually, if you read the final line of the Gemara, it says, Rabbi Elazar Amar, Taima de Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel mehacha, that the reasoning of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel comes from another pasuk, Dechsiv lekayem esigeres apurim azos hashenis. It says to establish this Purim letter, hashenis, the second. So he understands. I think in the simple reading, it was like a second letter that went out. But here the Gemara is saying hashenis means the second in the second month. That teaches you that it should be hashenis. It should be in the second Adar. So that's his source. So says the Gemara, v'itztrich l'michtav hashenis, v'itztrich l'michtav b'chol shana v'shana. Now it was necessary within this opinion that we do in the second Adar to write and to bring down both verses, both the verse that says that hashenis, it's the second one, the second Adar, and the pasuk that says b'chol shana v'shana, to do it every year, the way you do it every year. Which also teaches us to do it in the second month, according to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, because that's how you do it every year. You do it in the Adar that's next to Nisan. So, but both are necessary. Says the Gemara, De'i, the second line on Zayin Amud Aleph, on 7a, De'i mi b'chol shana v'shana, because if it just said to do it the way you do it every year, hava mina ki kushyan. So I might have thought like a question, meaning, I might have thought to say like the other opinion. How do you do it every year? You do it in the month that's adjacent to Shvat, the first Adar, you should do it in. So Kamash Malan Hashenis. So Hashenis comes and says, no, you do it in the second one. V'yash Mo'inan Hashenis, and if they had only written Hashenis, the second one, Havamina B'tchila B'rishon Uvasheni. I might have thought that L'chatchila you should do it both. That it's established that you should do it in the second one in addition to the first one. That's what I might have thought, and that you should read the Megillah in both Adars. Kamash Malan b'chol shana v'shana. That's why it says b'chol shana v'shana. You should do it like you do it every year. Then no, it's limited. You only do it the way you do it every year, which is in one Adar, and in the Adar that's adjacent. Well, we know it's the second one, and so you should do it like you do it every year, that you only read it one time. Okay. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi, Hai Hashenis my Avidle. Now the other opinion, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi, who says that you read it in the first Adar. So what does he do with this word Hashenis? That to establish it for the second one, sounds like you do it in the second Adar. So Mibayule, look at Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yehuda. Now he needs the word Hashenis to teach like the teaching of Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yehuda. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yehuda, B'tchila Kavua B'Shushan. That originally they established Purim celebration and the mitzvahs of Purim specifically in Shushan, Ulubasov, B'chola Olam Kulo, and after that in all other places. And so this teaches me that it was Yigaris Hashenis, so it was a second letter, it was a second enactment to that, because originally it was only in Shushan, and then there was an Yigaris Hashenis, there was a second letter that went out that said that they should, I think the next year or so, that said that it should be celebrated everywhere. Okay. Amar Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda. Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda says, I guess now that we've mentioned Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, we're going to quote him again. So, Shalcha lev Esther lechachamim. Esther sent a message to the sages following the episode of Purim, and she said, Kavuni ledoros. She said, establish me for generations. What does it mean, establish me for generations? Rashi says, L'yom tov, for a holiday. Make Purim into a holiday. U'akriya, you should have to read the Megillah. Rashi throws in something interesting, I'm not sure why. He says, Lios li l'shem, for me to have a name. It almost runs contrary to what we usually say about Esther. She wasn't interested in her own self-promotion. She wanted to show the miracle that Hashem had done. So I'm not sure why Rashi would say Lios li l'shem, that she was saying it, that she wants to have her name known. But in any event, the Gemara says she said to the Chum, Kavuni l'doros, make me into a holiday, make Purim into a holiday, make reading the Megillah a requirement. So Shalchula, they sent to her, Kinat milreres aleinu lebein ha'umos. You're going to create hate. You're going to create enmity between us and the nations. The nations, if they see us celebrating our victory over the Persians, so that's gonna and reading about it publicly, that's going to create enmity. So Shalcha lahem, she said back to them, "Nah, it's not a big deal. Kvar ksuvani al divrei yamim malcheim ladayu faras. I'm already written in the chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia. So they already know the story. It's well known, and it won't affect anything for us to publicize it within ourselves and to celebrate it within ourselves." The Gemara doesn't quote Psukim here, but the Maharsha points out that you can kind of see this in the Megillah if you read through the verses, that this type of conversation, if you look at the back and forth that goes on at the end in terms of establishing the holiday. Okay. Rav v'Rav Chanina v'Rav Yochanan v'Rav Chaviva. So Rav Chanina, Rav Yochanan, and Rav Chaviva. Now the Gemara interjects before it tells us what they say, and tells us that Masna, so they taught. Then it interjects as Bekulei Seder Moed, throughout Seder Moed, which is the order of Mishnah that our Masechta Megillah is founding. It says Kol Kiyai Zuga, wherever you find this group, Chalufei Rabbi Yochanan u'Ma'ayel Rabbi Yonasan. Take out Rabbi Yochanan and insert Rabbi Yonasan. So okay, so instead of Rabbi Yochanan, it says it should be Rabbi Yonasan. So this group, Rav Chanina, and Rabbi Yonasan, and Rav Chaviva, Master, they taught the following. Shalchalam Esther lechachamim. Esther sent a message to the sages. Kisvuni l'doros. Write me for generations. This is different than what it said before. Before it said that she requested kavuni l'doros, establish me as a holiday and a requirement to read the Megillah. Now she's saying, write me for generations. What does it mean to write me for generations? She's saying you should write the Megillah. The Maharsha says it means that she was asking that the book of Esther, written with Ruach HaKodesh, it should be counted as part of Tanakh. It should be part of Ksuvim, part of the writings of Tanakh. So now we'll see in a moment. It's kind of clear from the Gemara that what the focus of Megillas Esther, and in terms of this Gemara and in terms of it becoming a part of Tanakh, is that it bears within it a story of destroying Amalek. And even though it's not explicit in the Megillah, but Chazal teach that Haman was a descendant of Agag, right? He's called Agagi. He was an Amaleki, and many of the commentaries understand that the enemies that fought us and that were destroyed were, the closet Amalekites, and that the story of Purim, the victory over Haman and the victory over enemies, was a victory over Amalek. And so when she's asking that Esther should be part of Tanakh, in a sense she's saying, let this story of our victory over Amalek be canonized as part of Tanakh. So Shalchu La, they sent to her, Halo kasafti lecha shalishim. So they sent back. The Gemara quotes a pasuk in Mishlei in Proverbs that Shlomo HaMelech writes, I've written to you 3 times, which isn't necessarily a direct reference to anything to do with Amalek, it seems, but it's telling us that it's appropriate to write about something 3 times and not more. Maybe that's like a chazaka, and so it's saying I've already written about Amalek. It's already written about Amalek in Tanakh 3 times. Right? The Gemara refers shalishim v'lo ribeim. You should write about it 3 times, but not 4. And so it already talks about Amalek 3 times. First time is in Parshas Beshalach, when Amalek attacks us. The second time is in Parshas Kiseitze, at the end of Parshas Kiseitze, where we have the mitzvah to remember to destroy Amalek, and remember what Amalek did to us, and to wipe them out. And then in Sefer Shmuel, when Hashem commands Shaul to destroy Amalek, so that's the 3rd time. So it's already written. Our war with Amalek is already written 3 times. It shouldn't be written more. Ad shematzu lo mikra kastu b'Torah, until they found a pasuk in the Torah that would help them resolve this and allow for the story of Esther, the story of destroying Amalek in Esther to be part of Tanakh. And that is because it says, Ksov zo zikaron b'sefer. This is back in Parshas Beshalach when it talks about our war against Amalek. It says, write this as a remembrance b'sefer, in the book, in the sefer. And the Gemara learns out, Ksov zos, write this means Masha kasav kan uve Mishnah Torah, what's written here and in the Mishnah Torah, meaning in Devarim in Parshas Kiseitze. And what it's telling us is that is, I guess, like Ksov zos, write this in the sefer. Everything in this sefer, everything in the Torah is counting as 1. So even though it mentions it twice, fighting Amalek in Torah, in the 5 books of the Chumash, but that only counts as 1. So Zos, write this one, Basefer in the book, it only counts as 1. So those count as 1. Then it says, So Zos, Machikasa Kai Mishnah Torah, Zikaron, the Drasha goes on, it says Zikaron, you should write a remembrance, that's the 2nd time. So Zos, write this. That's what's written in the Torah. Zikaron, a remembrance, Mashakasav ben Nevi'im, that's what's found in Navi. And Basefer, and there should also be something Basefer. In the Sefer, Mashakasav ben Megillah, that which is written in Megillah. So I think actually there's something deeper going on. The Maharsha elaborates on this a little bit, which is that the Gemara is coming out that no, the Shileshim, the 3 times that it should appear, is not just that 3 times throughout Tanakh, but 3 times, 1 in Torah, 1 in Navi, and 1 in Ksuvim. So the Zos is the Torah. So Zos, write this right in the Torah. Now it happens to appear twice in the Torah, but it has to appear in the Torah. Zikaron, or remembrance, is in Navi, in the prophets, and Basefer in the writing, in the written work, which is Ksuvim. So that, where's that? That's going to be in the book of Esther. So that's where they found room to say it could be part of Tanakh, and the destruction of Amalek in the story of Purim is going to be the third place. It's going to be the representation of this idea in Ksuvim, in the writings. Okay, so the Gemara says actually Ketanai, that this idea to be able to do this, if you can say this is a machlokas Tanayim, it's a dispute between Tanayim. It's a brisa. It says Ksov Zos Mashakasav Kan. The first opinion says no. Zos means what's written in Parshas Beshalach. Zikaron, or remembrance, Mashakasav Mishnah Torah, what's written in Devarim. That's two. And Basefer is Mashakasav and Nevi'im, what's written in Nevi'im, and there's no room for including Megillah. Divrei Rabbi Yoshua. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yoshua, and according to this, there's no room to include Esther as part of Tanakh. Rabbi Lazar Amodai says Ksav Zos. Right, this is Mashakasav Kan Uva Mishnah Torah. That Zos covers both what's in Parshas Beshalach and in Parshas Kiseitze in Devarim. That everything, both mentions in the Chumash are covered by Zos. Zikaron, a remembrance, is Mashakasav ben Nevi'im. That's where it appears in Nevi'im in the book of Shmuel. And Basefer, in the Sefer, is Mashakasav ben Megillah, what's written in the Megillah. So it's really it fits into a machlokas Tanayim, and the way our Gemara counts it would be going like the second opinion of the brisa, that Esther can be counted as part of Tanakh. Okay, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, Esther eina metames hayadayim. Esther, the book of Esther, the scroll, if you touch the scroll, it does not make your hands tameh. Now, as opposed to other Sifrei Kodesh. So the Gemara says in Shabbos, Rashi mentions that the Chachamim were gozer, the Chachamim decreed that touching Sifrei Kodesh would make one's hands tameh. This was part of a way of protecting the Sifrei Kodesh. People would take food and wrap it in their scrolls, and then mice would come and they would eat the scrolls. And this was a way of, by making that the scrolls make your hands tameh, this was a way of stopping people from hiding food within their scrolls and protected the scrolls. But that was the Gezerah, was that Sifrei Kodesh, holy scrolls of Tanakh, would make one's hands tameh. So Shmuel says, but Esther, the book of Esther, does not make your hands tameh. So sounds like you're saying it's not part of, it doesn't count as Sifrei Kodesh, doesn't count as part of Tanakh. L'meimra desavar Shmuel Esther la b'ruach hakodesh nemra. Now, does that mean that Shmuel holds that Esther was not written with Ruach HaKodesh, with divine inspiration? V'hamar Shmuel. But Shmuel said, Esther b'ruach HaKodesh nemra. Shmuel says, the Gemara is going to talk about it, and that Esther was written with Ruach HaKodesh. So why would he say that it doesn't make your hands tameh, it's not considered a holy book? Says the Gemara, nemra likros v'lo nemra lichtov. Yeah, he holds it was written with Ruach HaKodesh, but for the purpose of reading, for the oral character of it, but not for the written character, that the Sefer should have holiness. It's to be read, that there's holiness to the reading of the words, but the scrolls themselves do not have holiness. That's the opinion of Shmuel. Now the Gemara asks a contradiction. How could Shmuel's a Ramora, he's a later authority, he's saying Esther does not make your hands tameh. Meisvei, we have a brisa that seems to contradict this. The brisa says, Rabbi Meir says, Koheles eino metames yadayim. Koheles, Ecclesiastes, does not make your hands tameh. Umachlokas b'shir hashirim. Shir hashirim, the Song of Songs, that's a machlokas. Rabbi Yossi says, Shir hashirim metames yadayim. That Shir hashirim, the Song of Songs, does make your hands tameh. Umachlokas b'koheles. And Koheles is in dispute. Rabbi Shimon says, Koheles mikule beishamim mechumer beisela. Koheles is one of the examples where we have that Beis Shammai is more lenient than Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai says Koheles does not make your hands tummy, and Beis Hillel says that it does. Aval Rus v'Shir Hashirim ve'Esther, but Rus, Shir Hashirim, and Esther mitaming asayadayim. They do make your hands tummy. So Rabbi Shimon says that Esther makes your hands tummy. Now, we have different opinions here about Koheles and Shir Hashirim, but we have only one stated opinion here about Esther, and that is that it makes your hands tummy. So how could Shmuel say, Shmuel, who's a later authority, say that Esther does not make your hands tummy? Here we have Tanaim saying that Esther does make your hands tummy. So the Gemara says, Huda Amar Rabbi Yoshua. It must be Shmuel is saying, he's holding like Rabbi Yoshua. Who's Rabbi Yoshua? Rabbi Yoshua was from that brisa before. We had a brisa before that we had two opinions whether you can fit, whether there's room to fit Esther into Tanakh, whether there's room for another story about Amalek in Tanakh. It depending how you parse the verse. Ksov zos zikaron basefer. So the brisa brought two opinions. One was consistent with what our Gemara had been saying, that Esther asked to be part of Tanakh, and at first they said no, you can't, and then they said actually we could work again. It could work with the verses because we can count the two in Chumash as one, and then you have the one in Navi and you have the one in Ksuvim. That was one opinion. But the Bryce had another opinion that said no, that didn't say anything like that. It said Ksov Zos is the one in Parshas Beshalach, Zikaron is the one in Parshas Kiseitze in Devarim, and Basefer is the one in Shmuel, in Navi, by Shaul HaMelech, but there's no room for another one. So, and that was the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua in the Brisa, and there's no room to count Esther as part of Tanakh. So Shmuel, who's saying that Esther won't make your hands tummy, could be holding like that Tana, that seems to hold that Esther would not be part of Tanakh. Okay. Tanya, we have a Brisa. Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya Omer. Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya says, Koheles eino mitame es hayadayim. Koheles, Ecclesiastes does not make your hands tameh, mipnei shechachmaso shel Shlomo hi. Because it's the wisdom of Shlomo. It sounds like he's saying it's not written in Baruch HaKodesh. It's not divinely inspired. It's Shlomo's own thoughts. Amru lo, so they said to him, V'chi zu bilvad amar. But 1 second. We know he said many mashalim. As it says, V'alo kvar nemar. The pasuk says, V'yidaber shloshes alafim mashal. That the pasuk says in Malachim Aleph, Perek Hey, chapter 5, it says he had 3,000 mashalim, 3,000 metaphors. So he had so many things that he said, and yet he chose to write in Koheles these specific ones. It must be that there is something unique. They're not just his chachma, his wisdom. These were ones that were divinely inspired. That's why he codified them into the book of Koheles. The Omer, and furthermore, it says al tosef al dvarav. Don't add to his words. It's a pasuk in Mishlei, in Proverbs, which is also authored by Shlomo HaMelech, saying don't add, at least in writing, to what he wrote. He chose very specifically what he wrote down. So all this implies that Koheles and Mishlei, they're written with Ruach HaKodesh. There's something more unique about them than the 3,000 metaphors that he said, which maybe those he said on his own. So now what's being added when it says, not only does it say he said 3,000 on his own, but he also says, don't add to anything that I wrote. What's that adding? Don't add anything. What he's saying, the Gemara is saying is, V'chitema, maybe you'll say, Meimar Tuva Amar, he said many things, Dibayi Ichtev, Udibayi Lo Ichtev. He said many things that if you want could be written, if you don't want, don't write them. and there's nothing special about the ones that he wrote down. Some he wrote down, some he didn't. That's what you might have said, and therefore they're not divinely inspired. The ones that he wrote down. That's what you might have said. Tashma. So it says, "Come and listen." Al tosef al dvarav. It says, "Don't add to his words." From the fact that he says that he forbids to add to what he wrote. So you see that the ones that he wrote are unique, and those are written with Ruach HaKodesh. Don't add to those, and and therefore they are divinely inspired, and that's what the Gemara seems to hold. Really, or the Brisa really, against the opinion of Shimon Manasseh. This was the response to Shimon Manasseh, who said Koheles does not mitami rent. It's just the wisdom of Shlomo. It's not divinely inspired. And the Brisa, the other opinion rabbis in the Brisa say back, no, it is. That's why he chose those to write down and codify, specifically because those are the ideas in Koheles are divinely inspired. Tanya, we have a Brisa. Rabbi Eliezer Omer. Rabbi Eliezer says, Esther Baruch HaKodesh Namra. Esther was said with divine inspiration. And he says, I'll prove it. Shenamar, because the pasuk says in the book of Esther, Vayomer Haman belibo, and Haman said in his heart. So when Haman comes to Achashverosh in the middle of the night, and Achashverosh can't sleep, and he hears Haman in the courtyard, and he calls in Haman, and he says, what should be done for the man whom the king wishes to honor? So the pasuk says, Vayomer Haman belibo. Haman said in his heart, who would the king want to honor more than me? Now, it says he said in his heart. How would the author know what Haman said in his heart? Says Rabbi Eliezer, you see, it must be that this is written with divine inspiration, that we know what Haman said in his heart. That's his proof. Rabbi Akiva says, Esther Baruch HaKodesh Namra. Esther was written with Ruach HaKodesh, with divine inspiration, Shenamar, because it says, Vati Esther no seischein beinei kol ra'ah. It says Esther found favor in the eyes of all who saw her. Now, how would the author know that that was true? Did the author interview everybody? So from the fact that it says that she found favor in everybody's eyes, so we know that it was written with divine inspiration. Rabbi Meir says, Esther Baruch HaKodesh Namra. Esther was written with divine inspiration, Shenamar, because the pasuk says, Vayivadah hadavar leMordechai. So when Bigsan and Seresh are plotting to kill the king, so it says, and the matter became known to Mordechai. How did it become known to Mordechai? So, who told him? It must be that he received a message with Ruach HaKodesh. Now, it's not clear to me how that proves, therefore, that the Megillah was written through Ruach HaKodesh. All we know is that step. But I guess how does the author know that Mordechai had Ruach HaKodesh? Maybe that takes Ruach HaKodesh. Okay, so that's not as clear to me, but that's the next proof. Rabbi Yossi ben Damascus Omer. Rabbi Yossi ben Damascus says, Esther Baruch HaKodesh Namra. Esther was said with divine inspiration, Shenamar, as the pasuk says, Uvabiza lo shalchu es yadam. That it says, and in the spoils they didn't extend their hands. So the Jews are destroying their enemies all over the country. The pasuk records they didn't touch the spoils. How does the author know that they didn't touch the spoils? They're fighting thousands of miles around the world, so around the empire. So how does nobody touch the spoils? It must be that was written with Ruach HaKodesh. Amar Shmuel. So that was all Tanaim. Those are all early authorities. Amar Shmuel says, Ihavai Hasam, if I was there when this conversation was going on, Havamina Milsa Da'adifa Mikulam. I would have said an idea that outdoes all of those. I would have brought the best proof that it's written Ruach HaKodesh. Shenemar, because the pasuk says, Kimu v'kiblu. It says that they established and they accepted this day of Purim. So the problem is, what does that mean, that they established and they accepted? You have to first accept before you establish. How can you establish before you accept the day? So therefore he says, what it means is kimu lemala masha kibu lemata. What the Megillah is telling us is kimu, they established on high masha kibu lemata, what they had accepted down below. That when they accepted the day of Purim down below, it's saying they were mekayim it. They established it in the heavens that indeed it should be a holy day and a special day. So that how does the author know that what went on in the heavens? So says Shmuel, you see that it's written Beruach HaKodesh with divine inspiration. Amar Rava, Rava says, L'kulu islu pircha. All of these proofs have refutations. L'bar mid Shmuel, except for the last proof of Shmuel, de lesle pircha, which has no refutation. What are the refutations? To Rabbi Eliezer, so we go back to Rabbi Eliezer said that the proof that it's written, that the Megillah, Esther is written with Ruach HaKodesh, with divine inspiration, is because it says, Vayomer Haman b'libo, Haman sang in his heart. How does the author know what he sang in his heart? So it must be it's with Ruach HaKodesh. So says Rava, no. Svarahu, it's just logical. D'lhava inish d'chashiv l'malko kavaseh. There was nobody who was as important to the king as Haman. V'hai ki kamapish tuva, and ve'amar adaite d'nafshei kamar, and so basically he went all out in suggesting what should be brought, because he thought it was about him. So in other words, from the fact, really, what he's saying is, there's two parts. There's what Haman saying in his heart, who would the king want to honor other than me? And then there's what he actually says out loud, which is, you should bring the king's guards and the king's horse, etc., and ride the man around. So from his answer, we can see that in his heart, he thought he was talking about him, because that's why he's giving such an illustrious reward, because he obviously was thinking about himself. So says Rava, it's not a proof it's divinely inspired. You see from his answer that he thought that he was clearly thinking of himself. Do Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva's proof, we can refute. What was Rabbi Akiva's proof? That it says Esther found favor in everybody's eyes. How do we know that? Must be it's divine inspiration. So that we can refute and say Dilma Rabbi Lazar. We could say, perhaps like Rabbi Lazar de Amar, because Rabbi Lazar says regarding this idea that she found favor in everybody's eyes, Melamed shekol echad ve'echad nidmasalo ku'umaso. It teaches me that everybody thought that she was a part of their nation. So, and Rashi says, they would actually say this. They would say, oh, she's part of our nation. So it could be that it's not divinely inspired. It's just that everybody was going around and saying that, oh, you want to know where she's from? She's one of us. She's from our nation. Because that she had this character trait that she just, everybody thought she was one of them. So that's how the author knows that she found favor in everybody's eyes. The Hadir Rabbi Meir. What about Rabbi Meir's proof? Rabbi Meir's proof was because Mordechai was able to, it became known to Mordechai what the plan of Bigsan and Zeresh was. It must be through Ruach HaKodesh. So to that, you can refute it and say, Dilmak Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Maybe you could say like Rabbi Chia bar Abba, the Amr, who says, Bigsan v'Seresh, Shnei Tarshim hayu. Bigsan and Seresh, they were Tarshim. They were from Tarshish, and they spoke this foreign language, and Mordechai, who was on the Sanhedrin, understood all 70 languages, and so they were plotting to kill the king and speaking in a language they thought nobody knew, and but Mordechai knew it, and that's how it became known. It wasn't through divine inspiration. That's what one could say. The Hadr Rabbi Yossi ben Damascus. What about the proof of Rabbi Yossi ben Damascus, who says that the pasuk says that they didn't touch the spoils? How does the author know? There's fighting going on all over the land. Must be its divine inspiration. So that we can refute and say, Dilma pristiki shadur. Maybe they sent messengers to Mordechai and Esther that we didn't touch. We didn't touch anything because that was the instruction, not to touch the spoils, and so maybe they sent messengers, confirming that they listen and the king shouldn't be mad, and that's how the author knows, because people confirmed it. But to Shmuel vaday lesle pircha. But Shmuel's proof, you have no refutation of that. Kimu v'kiblu, they established on high what they had accepted below. That you can't refute. That makes it clear that this was written with Ruach HaKodesh, with divine inspiration. Ravina Sorry, Amar Ravina, or some have Amar Rava. Hainu Damri Inshi. This is an expression of the expression of the following expression. That's what people say. Tava chada pilpalta charifta mimale tzani kari. One sharp pepper is better than a full basket of cold ones. So he's saying, so kind of interesting to say about the Tanaim. He's saying, look how sharp Shmuel was. One sharp pepper is better than all these other rabbis. Okay. Rav Yosef Amar Mehacha. Rav Yosef says, I have a different proof that was written with Ruach HaKodesh, with divine inspiration. Because it says, because it says that these days of Purim will never pass from amongst the Jews. So that's a prediction about the future that you can only make if you have divine inspiration. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Omer. Nachman Bar Yitzchak says, Mehacha, from the following, V'zichram lo yosuv mizaram. So a similar idea, it says that the memory of them will never leave their offspring. And again, such a statement can only be made if you have divine inspiration from God, that the memory of this will never be forgotten. Okay, hold here.